Tonight, Tech Yes citizens, we're going to be building a PC to play Microsoft's new flight simulator. Now, I've heard that people are struggling to get the FPS in this game. They are having problems, and this has been going forever in flight simulators. Flight simulators have always had problems getting really high FPS, so don't be surprised that Microsoft's 2020 flight simulator isn't getting you the FPS that you want like other potato games like, say for instance, Valorant or Fortnite. They're very easy because there's not a whole lot going on in that game with the engine, as opposed to a flight sim with so many different variables going on at the same time. Though, if you've got FPS problems, the first thing you can try, and this is a big important part of tonight's build, is that we've got 7 RGB fans in total. 3 at the front, we're going to be putting 1 at the back, and then 3 on this 360mm radiator, which we're going to be mounting at the top. So we all know, if you're an enthusiast tech, we all know RGB gives you more FPS, and it's going to be giving us more FPS in this case because we're using the i5 10600K, and that's because flight simulators, at least the ones from Microsoft, have typically been very single thread heavy and dependent, though we will check that out once we install the game. But I have a feeling the 10600K coupled with the Z490 Aorus Pro AX motherboard and 4400 megahertz DDR4 memory is going to give us the best shot at getting the best FPS on this game. So for the graphics card, we've got the RTX 2080 Super here from Aorus, and I'm hoping in this game at least that this graphics card won't be the bottleneck, at least at 1080p. But from what I'm hearing, the CPU is the bottleneck in this game, so we're going to give it the best shot it can. And another thing as well, Aorus sent over, because they knew I was doing a Microsoft Flight Simulator gaming PC, they sent over 2 NVMe drives to put in RAID 0 because they've heard that these levels, they got massive levels and they take a long time to load. So if you've got RAID 0, that's going to speed up your load times for all the levels within Flight Simulator. Though with that aside, today's video is sponsored by Gigabyte and Nvidia. Let's get on with this build and then install Flight Sim. And here is the finished product with 7 RGB fans ready to go. Now we've overclocked the CPU to 5.1 gigahertz, and then we've left it on overnight stress testing as well as downloading all the games. So I decided to download a couple more games because your first month on the Xbox Game Pass PC is $1. So that means you can play Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 for $1. Like, it's actually a really good deal right now. Anyhow, it's finally time now to start benchmarking this game. Okay, we gotta download, wait. Okay, so we've gotta now download another 91 gigabytes of storage after we downloaded the initial 150 gigabytes. This is really weird.
Yes, hello. I've just come to Australia and I've experienced your poor Aussie internet.
So now that this game is installed, we can go from a comparison here from all the way on the low preset to the medium to the high end, and then lastly to the ultra preset, what we can see here is that straight away, low settings is so taxing on this game. It's incredible how taxing this game is on not just your CPU, but your GPU too. This is a 2080 Super and it's being taxed at 60%, and the graphics kind of look like, on low settings at the very least, they look like something from back in 2010. So if you can, try to keep the settings on medium or above. That's my recommendation, but still, you will want to have high-end hardware to get the most out of this game. Though if you've got the hardware, and you've got the ability to turn the graphics up and get a decent playable experience, then this game really does come to life. Even just flying around in this plane on my beautiful home city of the Gold Coast, things like reflections off the windows and then outside just the lights coming on really are reminiscent of flying at night in a plane. Like, it's scary how sort of realistic this game can get. However, this is for me personally where this game sort of does have that initial wow factor, but it really is geared up towards someone who is so enthusiastic about flying. Me personally, I sort of just benchmarked it for you guys. I've built a PC up, but my passion doesn't lie in flying. So I'm probably just gonna maybe jump into this game for a couple more days, and then I'm pretty much done with it, unless there's some really cool sort of like jet fighter stuff that I can kind of get into and maybe try and do some Top Gun stuff and pretend like I'm back in the 1980s in that Tom Cruise film. But if someone's got like a Top Gun wingman package, I would love to check it out. Please link it in the description below, because I think that would be the most fun thing for me in this game. Or if you've got some kind of dogfights that you can have going on, that would be really cool. Or if it's just strictly flight simulators only, because yeah, I kind of just, I get bored and then I start trying to do tricks and I end up just doing some really bad crashes like you're seeing on the screen here. The next up here is a game that took me by surprise. If you guys remember, way back in the day, there was the original Mech Warrior, and I actually played this on PC, and then I went into a lot of different other games as time went on, and now I'm coming back to this all these years later, and there's Mech Warrior 5, aka Mech Warrior 3015. Now this game has RTX, and when I was asked by Nvidia and Gigabyte to do a PC build that featured RTX, I was kind of like, well, I want to play something that I actually enjoy, like the actual game, before we even look at RTX. And this game really was so enjoyable, and then if you want, you've got the option to turn on the RTX features, which of course will drop the FPS. We're at 1080p here. When we go from high settings without RTX on to high settings with RTX on, we do drop a lot of FPS, roughly 30%. But of course we do gain visual fidelity from that, and it just makes the game just more immersive, especially when there's a lot going on. And believe me, in this game there is a lot going on. It's extremely difficult to play, where you've constantly got to be moving, strafing left and right, watching to make sure you don't overheat, and then making sure that you don't get overheated by the enemies just laying into you too. So even on like a difficulty of 1/4, this game is extremely difficult. So I'm really impressed with this. I definitely want to play it more after I'm finished up with this video, because it's just that exciting.
And there we have it with the Flight Simulator gaming PC that has RGB. It actually ran the game well from what I'm comparing it with other videos out there. And the 10600K at 5.1 gigahertz, this is overclocked, and the memory speeds are clocked quite high. So if you guys are serious about playing Flight Simulator, then you're probably gonna have to be serious about the amount of money that gets extracted from your wallet, because this game is very taxing on the CPU side of things, and also on the GPU side too, where even on low settings at 1080p, it's still utilizing a lot of resources from the 2080 Super. But one thing I've straight away realized from this game is you'll either want to keep the settings between medium or ultra. I find those two presets are the best in terms of visual experience, but then if you're in a really heavy city with lots of cars moving and lots of stuff going on in big buildings, then it will tax the FPS even on one of these setups we had today, which is kind of like the best hardware you can throw at it, and we were still going into like 30 FPS, where if we dropped it into medium settings, we then gained a lot more FPS. And then depending on the map, so when I was flying on the Gold Coast, the FPS was a lot better. So depending on the country and the flight route you take, you will get a lot more FPS going down and dropping the settings. but then dropping down the settings to low showed us that the graphics between low and medium, the presets, was absolutely huge. So my advice would be, if you can, stick to medium preset over low, and if you can also take it up to ultra, then you're gonna gain a bit more visual fidelity over medium. And then high end, I found that was very close to ultra, but ultra didn't tax it a whole lot more than the high settings. Though another thing I've learned from Microsoft Flight Simulator is that you should never ask me to be your pilot because I'm hopeless at flying, both in the pilot seat, at least in this game, and when it comes to being a passenger IRL. I'm not a big avid enthusiast of flying. And it's funny because neither is Dadman. He's always sort of just never really wanted to fly too much. So that said, if you are getting into flying or you're a pilot, then you can lose yourself in this game for most likely days, months, or even years, because it is just massive, where you can make your own custom flight routes, fly over different areas of the world. So it's definitely impressive what Microsoft have done here with this game in terms of the gameplay itself. Though the optimization of the game itself does leave a little bit to be desired. I see a lot of people comparing this game to Crysis on the internet, and it definitely is similar in terms of needing high-end hardware to run it properly, just like Crysis did. But if I look back at Crysis 3 specifically, that game was very well optimized on the CPU side, at least from my memory, where it would max out the GPU at 100% a lot of the times. Even on ultra settings on this game, I couldn't see most of the time my GPU sitting at 99%, near 100%. And so that means that there is a little bit more to be desired in terms of optimization on the CPU side. And we've got a 10600K here, overclocked to 5.1 gigahertz with some high-speed memory too. So one thing about this game is, if you do want to get the most FPS possible, then you definitely want to get an overclockable CPU combo with a good cooler and start getting into the world of overclocking. Especially if you're going to sink hours and hours of time into this thing, then it will give you a nice sizable boost. Though after that, I jumped into the Mech 3015, and that was a lot of fun, especially the difficulty. I found this game very difficult to play. Like, it had a lot going on, where if you're looking for a hard to play mech game that's got the ray tracing involved and it's got all the graphics and it looks really good and plays really well, then I can recommend this game. It's definitely a lot of fun. And then because I'm on my first month of Game Pass, I saw the new Battletoads there and I decided to jump into that and start playing that for a bit. So the game's definitely on this platform. At least if you're going to join for just say a 3-month stint, you're going to get a lot of value worth out of that Game Pass in the first 3 months at least anyway. So there's some really good games on the platform. They're not just cheap, crappy games that no one's playing anymore. These are games that are really like in demand and have a high price tag. So it's good to see Microsoft doing some good with not just Flight Simulator, but also the Game Pass itself. Anyhow, if you guys enjoyed today's video, then be sure to hit that like button. Also, if you want to build a PC similar to this, then I will leave some links in the description below for you. And let us know in the comment section below, have you played Microsoft's Flight Simulator 2020 yet? If so, what did you think of it? Are you into flying yourself? Unlike me, love reading your thoughts and opinions as always, just like this question of the day here, which comes from Mario Stabek, and they ask, hi, I have a question. Is it worth to upgrade from the 750 Ti to the GTX 1050 Ti? I have a feeling that it is not much of a difference. And at first I was gonna say no, but then I thought about it a bit more, and the 1050 Ti is actually a sizable upgrade over the 750 Ti, though I wouldn't go out and pay market rates for a 1050 Ti because they're currently, in my opinion, quite overpriced, where a lot of people, at least where I live, are just going out and buying 1650 Supers brand new off the shelf, because a lot of people are trying to ask too much for a 1050 Ti. So if you can get one for a really good deal locally, whether it's off a friend or off someone in the marketplace locally where you are, then you can snap it up and you will get a sizable boost. But if you're looking for market rate prices, I'd either stick to say an RX 470, which can be really cheap on the used market, or go with the 1650 Super. Because I'm guessing you're going with a 750 Ti or a 1050 Ti, you probably got a rig that doesn't have a high-powered SU in there, or a Lisa in there, and you are looking just to get a quick and easy upgrade. So hopefully that answers that question. And if you guys have stayed this far and you're enjoying that content, you want to see at the moment it drops, monitors just run out again. That's a weird one. That's 2 videos in a row now. If you want to see the content the moment it drops, be sure to hit that sub button, ring that bell, and I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.